Hello, my name is Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and welcome to another 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis. Once again, this is a video analysis, not a shoutcast, so there will be plenty of spoilers throughout the match. I'll be looking primarily at macro level strategy, talking a lot about team compositions, their win conditions, what teams do, don't, and should do to pull off these win conditions and take the game for their favor. I'll also be looking at individual matchups, map rotations, lane combinations, item choices, objective control, and everything in between, as well as the occasional individual play when these things are paramount to the win or loss of a team. In this match in particular, I'll also be talking about morale, as this is a best of 5 series, and we'll see Samsung White sort of playing around later on in the game, and how it affects TSM's mentality towards coming back. Without further ado though, let's go ahead and get into this match. We have Team Solo Mid versus Samsung White. This is the second match in their best of 5 quarterfinals. Without further ado, let's get into picks and bans. So in picks and bans, we see Zillion, Rumble, Thresh ban. Just very generic bans. Overall, don't like Zillion, prefer not to play against Rumble. They're looking for this first pick Maokai. And Thresh has been very solid overall. On Samsung White's side, we see Orianna, Alistar, Lee Sin. As with every match that Samsung White plays against TSM, this Orianna ban is perfect. It really throws a wrench into a lot of TSM's preferred compositions, particularly hampering the Death Ball Protect the ADC comp that TSM are so fond of running. So first pick TSM, we see Maokai being picked up. Very solid pick, one of the top lane trifectas of the World Championship, as well as probably the best frontline tank in the game at the moment. On Samsung's White side, we see Janna and Kha'Zix being picked up. Two very solid but very generic picks, fit into almost anything. Kha'Zix and Lee Sin being the top 2 junglers of the World Championship. And since Lee Sin is banned, they're going to go ahead and grab Kha'Zix. Janna as well just provides some solid disengage, as well as being strong in the lane. Just made a great showing here in Worlds so far. On Team Solo mid side, we see them picking up jungler and mid laner, or jungler and support rather, Jarvan and Nami. Two very solid picks, Jarvan being one of the fallback champions for the jungle, and Nami just being a solid support, providing good protection, disengage, healing, lots of things the team needs. It doesn't really show anything, it just gives TSM solid champions so far. Now on Samsung White's side, here's where we see the big giveaway. While they are holding on to their surprise pick against this Maokai in the top lane, it's more of a surprise factor than it is a necessity factor. Samsung White really should have picked the Singe that we're going to see next, instead of say Fizz. This would have allowed them to counterpick the mid lane and provided better safety for them in this pick and ban phase. However, we do see them grabbing Fizz, grabbing Twitch in their second rotation. One of the problems with this is that it gives away their entire game plan. With Janna, Kha'Zix, Fizz, and Twitch, we're already seeing that Samsung White are moving towards more of a skirmish, brawl-centric team style. They want to find fights in the jungle. They want to find picks and assassinations. They're really going for get TSM scattered, and then pick them apart that way. Don't look for these big 5v5 team fights. Rather look for the skirmishes. And this should have been a huge red flag to TSM. One of the best counters to this type of play is, rather than playing into it, is to move into a super strong 5v5 team composition and start forcing your way through the enemy team, sort of bulldoze through them. One of the big things to also add to this is no matter who Samsung White pick as a top laner, except for maybe Lulu, who's been doing really badly in the top lane, they don't have any wave clear on their side. Their best wave clear is going to be a Janna Tornado and a Kha'Zix W, and that's not going to be enough to clear out a wave and stop TSM from being able to push a tower. As we've seen throughout Worlds, when teams lack wave clear, if they ever fall behind in power, then they're really at the mercy of the other team, as the other team will simply siege up, force the tower, and then all Samsung White's choices would simply be full-on engagement. They have no real poke. They have no wave clear. They don't have healing, so they can't sustain through and wait for a great opportunity. They'd have to go for a full-on engage and for a full-on flank. The other thing to note is that they're lacking in AoE. While Fizz does have some minor ones, and Twitch can, if he gets the right positioning, provide a great line damage and wall, Maokai makes a great front line to deal with Twitch. Get on his face, force him to attack you, move and position yourself so that you're not getting the rest of your team hit by Twitch's ultimate. So there's a real lack of AoE on Samsung White's team, as well as the lack of wave clear. What this means is TSM had the opportunity to build a very heavy protect the ADC deathball composition. Maokai, Jarvan, and Nami are all very good at this. Though they're not the best at it, preferably you may want to see at least Sin, and then a Janna or Nami, Thresh even, someone who can provide a good peel. But Nami provides great protection and healing for the sustained siege, as well as providing huge disengage with her ultimate. Particularly, she can throw it at Twitch to disrupt his spray and pray from a very long range away. I'm going to get back to that real quick. I want you to pay attention to this match. This is the level 1, and this is a problem. One of the big reasons why TSM lose the early game so hard is they have this 5v4, but they do not go for it. Because they did not dedicate themselves to this invade, they're actually going to end up getting 3 buffed and then give up 2 kills early on. It was really a situation where they could have. They had 5 members versus 4. Fizz, Kha'Zix not very strong at the early game. Neither is Twitch. Janna is arguably good, but then on the flip side, you have Maokai, who has a snare, or you can do his extra high damage saplings. You have Corki, who has lots of AoE damage in his Q, and you have the bubble stun coming in from Nami. So you had very solid options. TSM should have taken that invade, dedicated themselves to it, and just gone for it. Instead, because they didn't, we see that Singe was able to get a good amount of free time on the top lane. This allowed him to proxy, push, as well as start off the blue buff so Kha'Zix can get over there quickly. Samsung White had a better plan for this, a better reactionary plan to what TSM's moves were, and when TSM failed their invade by not dedicating themselves to it, they didn't have a method of recovery. Also, the fact that the teleport was used and Singed was not is going to come in huge here. And it really, this is a reactionary play that comes in from TSM saying, well, crap, I didn't get both my buffs, I need to get one, let me go try and get theirs. But the problem is TSM is going into this fight essentially 4v5. Both duos are on the bottom, so there's the 3v3 with the jungler and the bot lanes there. The mid laners are both in position, so there's 4. But TSM don't have a teleport, and as we will see, this Singe TP is going to come in massive. And this is the problem, is TSM aren't counting numbers in this situation. They're going in undermanned. We see the Singe TP comes in. Great play here. Mid lane turns into a 1v1 brawl. It's very close. But unfortunately for Bergerson, Pawn is able to get the kill onto him. And this is going to allow Fizz to sort of take control of the lane. Anytime you have these double melee assassins in the middle, it becomes very brawl-centric, very volatile, and whoever gets the lead first is generally going to take the lane. So that's the level 1, level 2, 3, the low levels, first buffs, misplays by TSM. They really needed to dedicate themselves to that invade. Since they didn't, they really came out very far behind from it. And we're going to see the effects of this snowball throughout the next couple minutes. Getting back to the picks and bans and choices, as stated before, TSM could see, no matter who the top laner of Samsung White was going to be, what their strategy was. Very fight-centric, a lack of wave clear, a lack of real synergy among their champions in terms of a whole team composition. But rather a very fight-heavy brawly team who's looking to use mobility and stealth situations to create opportunities for 2v2, 3v3, one-on-one fights. So what TSM could have done, they picked up the Corki, which is a very good pick in this situation, I believe. It gives them very solid mid-game power, especially in conjunction with Maokai and Jarvan. This gives Corki the front line he needs, even though Maokai wants to scale up normally and Jarvan's kind of weak, coming from the jungle for a little bit. Since there are two of them and they'll both be sitting in Maokai's ultimate aura, they provide a strong enough front line for the mid-game power of Corki to shine through. Phosphorus bombs and his rockets are really massive at just AoE damage, at poke, at burst. They do all kinds of things well. And Corki will have a much larger power spike than Twitch will have at this point. So by having this pseudo frontline in the mid game, picking Corki allows that pseudo frontline to shine because they will be up long enough for Corki to do what he needs to get done. Corki's just strong all around. Because he has a solid mid-game power spike, it would allow TSM to hit that point where they can push into Samsung White's team very early instead of waiting, say like a Tristana would probably take until the 20-25 minute mark before you want to start tower sieging. With Corki, you could start the tower siege as soon as the Trinity Force comes up. The Zed pick, however, kind of ruins the team composition for TSM. If this Zed had been, say, a Lulu, then they would have had a much stronger Death Ball composition, offering some good peel with the Polymorph shields and Lulu's ultimate to protect against Fizz assassinations, which is really the only kind of assassination that they have to worry about in terms of being engaged upon, as Singed is going to be dealing a lot of damage over time rather than up front. And it's going to be very difficult for him to do so against a balled up composition, as they'll be able to lock him down with Maokai Snare into Nami Bubble. Maokai is also very strong against Fizz. If Fizz goes in, Maokai just snares him, gets him locked up, followed up by the Nami Bubble, etc. Jarvan can also Cataclysm Singed, and then just flag and drag out, and now you've taken Singed out of the fight for the entire duration of Cataclysm. There's a lot of ability for peel and protection, which is sort of why this Zed pick doesn't work. Is TSM's team would be much stronger at the slow siege, the poke, using what they have in their composition against Samsung White, who don't have any of these things. They don't have good poke, they don't have good wave clear. So a pickup of Lulu instead of this Zed would have been much stronger. As mentioned before, offering peel, safety, push power. Could have gotten early Lich Bait so she can hit turrets to promote the TSM tower pushing siege to go with Corki's Trinity Force. There were options here. Another one could have been Xerath. Just if you wanted to go more for poke, you could have got a lot of poke out there. It would have been a little weak to this Fizz pick though, especially in lane. I think the Lulu would have sufficed better. Orianna, of course, would have been the best, but it was banned. I'm just not a fan of Zed in this situation, because Zed wants to engage, he wants to fight and brawl, but TSM's team is weaker in the brawls, and one champion choice of Zed is not going to be enough to fix this issue. So then the last pick from Samsung White was, of course, Singed, and Singed is a pretty decent counter pick to Maokai. Rather than necessarily being a lane bully or a counter pick, it's more of like, I'm going to ignore you. He easily farms, takes out the creep waves, runs off and does something else, and we've already seen him doing that a lot in this game. So, talked a lot about the picks and bans, got a little bit into the team compositions of how they work. But now let's actually get into team compositions. I'm going to talk about Samsung White's first. Samsung White's team composition is really one of those compositions that's sort of win lane, win game. There's not a lot to the synergy of their team. They don't necessarily have any. Their biggest synergy is going to be in the fact that they're very skirmishing, very brawl-centric champions. They want to fight a lot in the jungle, find 2v2s, 3v3s, get these picks and assassinations. If they can generate enough of an early lead, they can send Fizz off to split push. The only problem is they don't have solid siege on their team either. They don't have good siege. They don't have good poke. It's very difficult for them to really do anything in the lanes with their team composition. So Samsung White is going to look for jungle action, for objective action. They're going to want to make as much plays as possible around a red buff and blue buff around Dragon. As we're seeing on the video now, we see this very brawl-heavy, brawl-centric team. They're going for the tower dive. And as mentioned before, they dive 4v2 and still lose a champion. In fact, they almost lose 2, even before Jarvan comes in. This goes to what I was saying, is they don't do well in the lane areas. They don't have the lockdown necessary for tower dives. They do have Fizz is the only one who could assassinate. He wasn't there for that situation. So that's why we see it going negatively for them. But they have very strong mobility, assassination potential in the jungle, pick potential, and catch potential. And they need to use their team composition to fight in the jungle, to fight over dragons, and pull TSM apart. Because if they fight TSM together, TSM's team fight is going to be stronger. So that's Samsung White for you. It's not much more else to say other than win lane, win game, find small skirmishes, 2v2s, 3v3s, snowball that into a gold lead, use the gold lead to take control of dragons. When you have enough of a gold lead, just take out TSM's team. If you find the right pick, earns you a tower objective. Just make sure, as Samsung White, anytime you have the opportunity to take a tower, do it, because those are going to be your best chances rather than forcing down a tower. So let's look at TSM's team comp. As said before, they really could have fit in this death ball, protect the ADC, huddle composition that they're so fond of running and that they're very good at. But this Zed was picked, so it kind of throws that out of whack. What they can do is use Jarvan and Zed to get picks in the mid game. Look for a lot of outnumbered fights where they can quickly jump onto, say, Kha'Zix or Fizz. It's going to be a little difficult with Fizz. But Jarvan has enough upfront damage in almost essentially just in his Cataclysm auto attack that Zed should be able to follow up and secure himself a kill. So they should really look to try and snowball this Zed from level 6 immediately. Let this Zed get into the point where he can split push, draw away Fizz from Samsung White's team, as long as he can still deal with Cinch on his own. If they can draw away Fizz, they can draw away a major form of engagement from Samsung White's team, and then they can use their 4-man squad to get the kills. To look for those objectives, to push the turrets, especially when Corki gets his Trinity Force. This gives some good damage on the turrets. The lack of wave clear from Samsung White will make things very difficult for them to defend, and the fact that if Zed can draw Fizz away, now the primary assassination tool, the person who goes all in and is going to secure that kill for Samsung White, has now been pulled away. This will allow them to deal with Twitch a lot easier. And then once Twitch is down, Singed and Kha'Zix aren't really going to be the threats, the upfront threats. They're going to be more over time, especially Singed, and TSM's team composition can deal with it. Aside from these small brawls that they can try and get with Jarvan and Zed, Maokai will provide a good opportunity to help in that. If the 3-man squad of Maokai, Jarvan, Zed can probably beat out Singed, Kha'Zix, Fizz early enough on, as long as they can make sure to take out that Fizz, and then probably have to run away from the Singed. Over time, he'll end up doing more. It's really a rough match for TSM. They don't have that concentric strat concentric synergy of a team because of Zed. And I can't stress how much stronger their team as a whole could have been. So with the team composition that they do have, the best bet for them would be to get Zed ahead. Having Zed ahead is always a benefit. Allows him to split push, allows him to assassinate targets in a team fight, sort of play the suicide role, hop in, kill the target, and die if necessary, but you can take out a priority target. In this case, that would be Twitch. If they can take out Twitch, then they should win the fight as long as Fizz doesn't take out Corki, which should be a lot more difficult for Fizz to pull off than Zed to pull off. If TSM at any point can get ahead in this game, they should be able to be in complete control. They have the better 5v5 for taking out Dragon. They have Poke that Samsung White does not have. They have Sustain that Samsung White does not have. And they have good wave clearing Corki, so they can defend, they can push. There's just more options for this team. When it comes to being ahead, they can also turret siege. As mentioned before, Corki has this trendy force. He gets off one hit or two hits. You slowly whittle down a turret and force Samsung White to defend it. If at any time their Samsung White are outnumbered, it could be very possible for TSM to dive. They do have dive-heavy champions in Maokai, Jarvan, and Zed. If they can take out the Twitch and escape, if they know when Singed TP is down so he can't join the fight, they can turn this 5v5 on its head, 4v5 on its head, and go in for these solid turret dives necessary. One key point, though, is going to be this Maokai. He does need to be with TSM's team. It's going to be very difficult for him to be in the split push role. He's the one who has to have his ultimate up around the team when Fizz goes in to make sure he can't assassinate somebody. He's the one who needs to land that snare so it can be followed up by Nami Bubble and lock him down and explode him with Corki's damage. Just that way you can make sure he's taken out of the fight when he goes in. It's going to be very important for this to happen. So those are the team compositions. I said again, a lot of 2v2, 3v3 power on Samsung White's team. They want to split TSM up. They want to draw them into the jungle, pull them out into the lanes, and stay away from turrets. Lots of map rotations, lots of movement around the map. Just lots of trying to run everywhere and make TSM, react to them. Make TSM follow Samsung White around the map. As for TSM, their goal should be to get Zed ahead. Let him split push, draw Fizz away, take out a primary assassination engage tool of Samsung White, and then use the 4-man squad to push down turrets and objectives and try and continually force these situations to happen. Run that 1-4 and make sure to stay together as that 4, as it will be very essential to not be drawn apart by Samsung White's team. Sorry about that. So, let's actually look at the game. So, haven't watched it too much. As we see, a lot of TSM's win conditions haven't happened. Zed got behind early. It was very close in that 1v1 brawl that we saw in the first 4 minutes. And since then, Samsung White have played their composition well. They're constantly invading the jungle of TSM. They've been all over the red buff, blue buff, every jungle camp. We look at Jarvan. He's been completely shut down. Amazing is 151. While he has 66% participation in his team kills, he's also got over a third of the team's deaths. This is not necessarily him playing bad, but rather he's being picked on. Samsung White's composition is about playing in this jungle, about drawing TSM into bad locations and bad fights, especially when they're fighting without Maokai. And they've done this very well. We see them constantly rotating between turrets. They're looking to force open these opportunities. Even every little bit of damage counts on against these turrets. It's only the inhibitor turrets that regen HP, and those ones are going to be a little difficult for Samsung White to break. However, they're going to break it through gold power alone. We already see a 10k gold lead, and it's only 20 minutes into the match. This is humongous lead for this early on, and that in itself is almost a death sentence. And here we just saw a fight happen without Maokai, and this is one of the essential key components of TSM's team, is that Maokai has to be around for these fights. He is the peel, he's the protection, he's that front line. If he's not there, Samsung White are just going to run them over, and we see them getting into this mid inhibitor. Most of the videos I like to talk about what teams can do to come back, and at this point the answer is really nothing. TSM have no opportunities for getting back into this game. It's all on Samsung White to close it out. They have the gold lead, they have full control of the map, they have all the pressure to put onto TSM, and there's nothing that TSM can do to get it back. We are going to see a couple things happen in this game, and most of it is going to be Samsung White screw around, and this is really bad. This is something you should never do in a series, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But the reason why I say they mess around is, look, we're looking at a 13,000 gold lead. Samsung White could easily close this game out within the next 5 to 10 minutes if they wanted to. They have all the pressure that they could put onto Baron, drawing TSM out into these bad areas of fight. Take complete control of the vision of the blue buff jungle of TSM. Just deny vision, take vision control, take Baron, go for the push and the win. Alternately, they should just move to the bottom lane and look for, the kills look for the turret in the bottom lane. Right now in particular, Samsung White have a 4-on-1, and the one person is the support. Instead of going for the objective, they're chasing Nami around. Samsung White could have rushed the bottom inhibitor turret. Singe tanks it, Twitch kills it, then you can take out a second inhibitor. With the bottom inhibitor down, you can definitely go for Baron very easily. It's almost a guaranteed Baron if you can take the opposite inhibitor, the bottom ones. But Samsung White don't do this. We see them running around. And this is going to come into what I'll talk about in a bit, is morale. And while this game goes a little bit long, I'm going to talk about a couple other things first. So let's say, what could TSM have done in this game to turn it around, to make it different? Well, as stated at the very beginning, dedicate yourself to that level 1. If you're going to have 5 people in this area, you might as well go for it. They saw Singed at top already. They knew that they had them outnumbered. At the very least, they could have pulled Singed teleport and then had Maokai teleport top, which would have generated them a lead in the top lane, and then been more likely to guarantee them getting 2 buffs instead of a 1 buff start. Outside of that, they needed to not be drawn into Samsung White's fights. Samsung White did a great job tower diving Zed as soon as Fizz hit level 6, knowing that Fizz was going to hit 6 first because he did win that 1v1 brawl. Samsung White were ready for it, and that's important. It's one way players should note that whenever you can get a 1v1 kill, your jungler needs to be informed so that he can be prepared when you hit level 6. That way you have that ultimate advantage. This is very important to snowballing leads. Other than that, TSM, they could have tried to transition from that point into more siege. Would have required them to stay alive a lot longer. But Samsung White took that small gold lead and they just kept pushing it into TSM. More jungle control to shut down Amazing. more tower dives to continually generate this brawl-centric team style in this league, to throw chaos and confusion into TSM and not let them play their own game. So one more thing to talk about before getting into the morale stuff, as the game still goes on for quite a bit. I'll talk about Singed versus Maokai matchup quick. Singed is Looper's pocket pick against Maokai. We see it twice during the World Championship, and this is the game it does the best in. While it's not a counter pick per se, Maokai still does the same thing that Singed does. He farms well, he gets his items. Singed doesn't stop Maokai, but Maokai can't do anything to Singed. Singed is allowed to roll around the map and just run and cause havoc and chaos. Singed is easily able to wave clear, just puts down his poison, runs through the creeps. As soon as the creep dies, he runs off somewhere else, comes back for the next wave. Keeps repeating this over and over and over again. And that's the Singed versus Maokai matchup. There's not much to it. Maokai just needs to keep the creeps off his turrets, and the rest of the team needs to know that Singed is going to be a little bit of an uncontrolled nuisance throughout the game. And here's where I want to talk about morale. Previously, we saw a fight go, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 3-4 in Samsung White's favor. But TSM were able to make a good fight, and this was with almost a 15,000 gold deficit. Right here, we see TSM are setting up a pick. They've taken this mindset, okay, we're going to lose, let's go try some stuff, let's do some crazy things. 5-man in a bush, they go for a fight even outside of their base against Baron. They're coming back in terms of mentality. Because Samsung White didn't finish this game 5 minutes ago, TSM are allowed to sort of recuperate. And while this isn't the best fight to showcase it, we will see it coming up as the match goes on. And this is the point where Samsung White are getting themselves in trouble for the entire series. In a best of 5, best of 3, best of anything, mentality is very important. I think I missed my window of opportunity for talking about mentality. But let's go back and talk about it. We saw TSM, they're setting up the 5-man pick. They're having a little bit of fun. And if you go back and watch the previous fight, as said before, they had 12k gold deficit and still were able to take the fight to Samsung White. Almost even. Once again, we see them going in with this 22,000 gold deficit, and they're fighting with Samsung White and coming out pretty well for how far behind they are. Though it is going to be the end of the game, TSM are able to come back and get kills. This game is not a whitewash. If Samsung White had ended this game 5-10 minutes ago, it would have prevented TSM from recouping their morale. And that's what happened. Once TSM realized, hey guys, this game is over, they were given time to reset. And this is going to come back to bite Samsung White in the butt in the next game. And the next game we see TSM coming together much more strongly. Like right here, we look at them, they don't seem necessarily devastated, right? They realize what was going wrong. They're like, hey guys, let's try this crazy 5-man pick. Let's take these fights to them instead of waiting back. You can go back and see TSM's mentality change. And if you look at the player cams too, you can start to see where they're smiling. And this is a game in which they got obliterated for it's almost a 25,000 gold lead at the end, 10,000 gold lead before 20 minutes. This match was a stomp, but Samsung White didn't close it out. If Team Solo Mid were able to win the series, then this would have been the moment that Samsung White lost, because they did not put the nail into TSM's coffin. I remember watching this game live, talking to one of my friends when this morale thing happened. I told him this is where TSM wins if they win the series, because Samsung White almost threw the series due to letting TSM recuperate their mentality. And so this is why mentality as well as simply performance, strategy, mechanical skill, and whatnot is just as important. If you're going in with a defeatist attitude, you're going to lose. And that's kind of what TSM went into in these first two games against Samsung White. They were the underdog. They were expected to lose. Everyone was calling the matches, the series 3-0. And now, in this game, we see for the first time that TSM are able to shake off that defeatist attitude. And in the next match, we see that TSM finally come to play. So that's my spiel on this match. I hope it was informative. I hope it was entertaining. If you take away anything, really take away morale in best of fives, best of three series, and how important it is. The other thing to take away is really notice your team compositions and your synergies, especially in comparison to the other team. TSM had the opportunity to build a strong frontline bulldozer, death ball, protect the ADC composition, and run over Samsung White's team as a 5-man squad. Instead, even one pick can kind of throw it off, and throw it off really badly. And especially when it's a champion like Zed, who has to be ahead to be effective. And so that's it. Once again, the notes for this match can be found below, as well as a link to all of my 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis notes and videos. I'm Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and thanks for watching.